Hi, my name is Ariana, and today I'm going to discuss vitamin B12 deficiency. Specifically, what are the risk factors for vitamin B12 deficiency, and does B12 deficiency affect the clinical course of other illnesses? I have broken up the content of this presentation into topics. The first topic we will discuss is vitamin B12 and its important functions. Next, we will discuss the diseases caused by vitamin B12 deficiency. Third, sources of the vitamin. Fourth, risk factors for the deficiency. The effect of B12 deficiency in neurodegenerative diseases. And lastly, the effect of B12 deficiency in COVID-19. Let's get started. What is vitamin B12? Vitamin B12 is a group of water-soluble cobalt-containing compounds known as cobalamin. In the US, cyanocobalamin, hydroxycobalamin, and methylcobalamin are forms of vitamin B12 available as commercial supplements. What are the functions of vitamin B12? B12 is required for the formation of the amino acid methionine from the amino acid homocysteine. Homocysteine is catalyzed by the enzyme methionine synthase, which requires the vitamin B12 coenzyme methylcobalamin. Homocysteine accepts a methyl group from methylcobalamin, which forms methionine. Methionine is the source of a methyl donor for methylation reactions. Methylation reactions are crucial for the pathway of purine and pyridine formation for DNA and RNA synthesis, myelin regulation, and the synthesis of biochemical compounds. What are some diseases caused by B12 deficiency? There are two diseases caused by B12 deficiency. 1, megaloblastic anemia, and 2, neurological dysfunction. As we know, vitamin B12 is necessary for DNA synthesis and cell division. Thus, absence of B12 causes red blood cells to grow but not divide. The result is less healthy red blood cells, which are replaced with large, pale cells called megaloblasts. The function of red blood cells is to deliver oxygen to our tissues. If we have less healthy red blood cells, we have less oxygen delivered to our working muscles. And the result is fatigue, a common symptom found in anemic patients. The second disease caused by B12 deficiency is neurological dysfunction. Vitamin B12 plays an important role in maintaining myelin sheath, the protective coating around nerve fibers. If you think of a wire and you have all this electricity that's conducting through, the myelin sheath is the insulation, the rubber that's around the wire. If you're vitamin B12 deficient and the physiological formation of this insulation is disrupted, you no longer have correct nerve signal transmission. This causes cognitive and psychiatric disturbances, gait instability, neuropathy, and autonomic dysfunction. What are sources of vitamin B12? Vitamin B12 is synthesized by bacteria, not plants nor animals. Animals obtain B12 from the ingestion of bacteria on their food. Animals accumulate and store B12 in their liver, as well as other tissues. As a result, beef liver is the best source of vitamin B12. Other good sources of the vitamin are animal products in general, like meat, eggs, dairy products, as well as fortified foods. Humans are incapable of making B12 via endogenous synthesis, and we rely entirely on the ingestion of animal products as our source of B12. Thus, B12 is an essential vitamin. Okay, what are the steps of vitamin B12 absorption? In vitamin B12 absorption, It starts in the salivary glands. The salivary glands produce R protein. R protein protects B12 as it travels through the stomach. Next, stomach cells, specifically parietal cells, release intrinsic factor. In the stomach, B12 binds with the R protein. As the vitamin travels through the GI tract, pancreatic enzymes partially degrade the R protein, releasing B12 to bind to intrinsic factor. In the ileum, the final part of the small intestine, the B12 intrinsic factor complex binds to an intestinal cell receptor and is absorbed. After about 3 to 4 hours, B12 enters the circulation bound to transcobalamin 2, a transport protein. Transcobalamin 2 enters the bloodstream and delivers B12 to the liver, bone marrow, and developing red blood cells. Vitamin B12 can be stored in the liver for up to 2 years. What is the incidence of vitamin B12 deficiency? Vitamin B12 deficiency occurs in 6% of individuals younger than age 60 and 20% in people older than 60 in the US and the UK. There are 2 main causes for vitamin B12 deficiency. 1, inadequate intake. 2, impaired absorption. Vegetarians and vegans are at risk of vitamin B12 deficiency if they do not take proper supplementation. This makes sense because vegetarians and vegans do not consume animal products, which is the main source of vitamin B12. Impaired absorption can be caused by a variety of things. If there's a disruption of absorption at any level, as previously discussed, such as lack of R protein, pancreatic enzymes, or intrinsic factors, also the absence and removal of the stomach or the ileum, the overgrowth of stomach bacteria, decreased stomach acid production due to acid-inhibiting medications, or disease called atrophic gastritis. In atrophic gastritis, it is an autoimmune disease that destroys parietal cells. Remember, parietal cells produce intrinsic factor. So if they are destroyed, we have decreased intrinsic factor, which is necessary for vitamin B12 absorption. This leads to vitamin B12 deficiency. This disease is known as pernicious anemia. What are the groups at risk for vitamin B12 deficiency? As we discussed, strict vegetarians and vegans because they do not consume animal products, the main source. Infants breastfed by vegans, and older adults. Older adults are at risk for B12 deficiency because atrophic gastritis is an age-related condition. Okay. I was very interested in this topic, specifically vitamin B12 deficiency and anemia in lacto-vegetarians. The reason I was particularly interested in this topic is because I was formerly a vegetarian for about 6 years of my life until I became B12 deficient, and I remember I had to take supplementation because it was a health concern. In this study, the prevalence of vitamin B12 deficiency and anemia was measured in 140 lacto-vegetarians compared to 140 healthy controlled subjects. In the study, 140 female lacto-vegetarians and 140 controls had their complete blood count and serum vitamin B12 measured and compared. The study found that 22.9% of lacto-vegetarians had anemia versus 0% in healthy controls, and 11.4% of lacto-vegetarians had serum vitamin B12 deficiency compared to 0% of B12 deficiency in healthy controls. The study revealed that the lacto-vegetarian diet is a major risk factor for vitamin B12 deficiency and anemia. If you recall, my research question was also asking about vitamin B12 deficiency and how it affects the clinical course of disease progression. I first wanted to look at neurodegenerative disorders. I'm very interested in the nervous system, so I came across a study that assessed whether B12 levels in patients with Parkinson's disease differed from patients with other neurodegenerative disorders. This was a human observational study of cross-sectional design that had analysis of B12 levels in patients with Parkinson's disease and compared it to B12 levels in patients with other neurodegenerative diseases, such as multiple system atrophy, dementia with Lewy bodies, Alzheimer's disease, progressive supranuclear palsy, frontotemporal dementia, or mild cognitive impairment. The study found that vitamin B12 levels were significantly lower at the time of diagnosis in patients with Parkinson's versus other neurodegenerative diseases. This proves that vitamin B12 deficiency is linked to Parkinson's disease progression. On the topic of associated diseases, I was also interested in the association between B12 and risk of COVID-19 infection. This study evaluated the association between vitamin B12 levels and risk of COVID-19 infection. In the study, 9,189 adults were surveyed about their dietary intake of vitamin B12 and the incidence of their COVID-19 infection. The study found that participants in the third quartile of vitamin B12 intake had 37% lower risk of developing COVID-19 infection as compared to the first quartile. This study revealed that moderate vitamin B12 intake had a protective effect against the COVID-19 infection. In conclusion, vitamin B12 is predominantly found in animal sources. Therefore, the vegan diet is a major risk factor for vitamin B12 deficiency. Although vitamin B12 deficiency causes megaloblastic anemia and neuropathy directly, it can also affect the natural course of other infectious and neurodegenerative processes.